The first time I saw a human cry, I thought they were dying. My name is Vex, and I serve as a tactical analyst aboard the Qarthian Imperial cruiser Shadowfang. We are, or rather we were, the apex predators of this galactic sector. 12 feet tall, armored hide thick enough to deflect plasma rounds, claws that could shred titanium. We had conquered 47 worlds before we even knew Earth existed. That should tell you something about how badly we miscalculated. It was 3rd Commander Jin who brought the initial reports to our War Council. I remember the confidence in his voice, the way his tail swished with anticipation as he activated the holographic display. The humans occupy a single planet in the outer rim, he announced, his voice dripping with contempt. Preliminary scans show them to be soft, small, with no natural weapons. Their military technology is adequate but unimpressive. They have been broadcasting their presence across multiple frequencies for decades, with no apparent concern for predatory species. Supreme Commander Rax leaned forward, his massive frame creaking the reinforced chair beneath him. How many soldiers can they field? Approximately 200 million combat-ready individuals across various organizational structures they call armies, navies, and air forces. Jin paused, pulling up comparison data. For context, our own forces number 800 million across the Empire. The War Council erupted in clicking laughter. The sound echoed through the chamber like rocks tumbling down a mountain. I should have spoken up then. I had reviewed the human data files more thoroughly than anyone else in that room. I had seen the historical records they so carelessly broadcast into space, the wars, the conflicts, the sheer relentless stubbornness of their species. But I was young, ambitious, and frankly, the data seemed absurd. How could a species that fought itself with such frequency pose any real threat to a unified empire? Supreme Commander Rax made his decision with characteristic swiftness. We take the planet. Standard invasion protocol. 3 battle groups. Maximum intimidation display. Followed by ground occupation of major population centers. The humans will surrender within 48 hours or be exterminated. That was 6 months ago. The invasion began exactly as planned, which should have been our first warning. Nothing ever goes exactly as planned in warfare. Our ships descended through Earth's atmosphere in perfect formation, our weapons hot, our troops eager for glory. We selected a landing zone in a region the humans called Australia, specifically targeting a coastal city named Brisbane. The humans did not run. They did not surrender. They watched our ships land with what their facial expressions indicated was curiosity mixed with anger. Then they started shooting. Their weapons were primitive by our standards. Chemical propellant-based projectiles that should have bounced harmlessly off our armor. Should have. The humans, in their typical excessive fashion, simply used bigger guns. Much bigger guns. The first Qarthian warrior to fall was struck by something the humans called a 50 caliber round. It punched through his chest plate, through his secondary heart, and out his back. He looked down at the hole in confusion before collapsing. The second warrior fell to a weapon they called an RPG. The third to something called a landmine. The fourth, fifth, and sixth to coordinated sniper fire from positions we could not locate. Within the first hour we had lost 200 soldiers. Within the first day, 3,000. Commander Jin, who had been so confident in his briefing, stood in the command center with his mouth hanging open, watching the casualty reports scroll across the screens. They are not running, he whispered. Why are they not running? I pulled up tactical data, my claws clicking across the console. Sir, analysis shows the human defensive strategy relies on what they call asymmetric warfare. They are not attempting to match our strength directly. Instead, they are exploiting environmental advantages, utilizing guerrilla tactics, and demonstrating remarkable adaptability to our assault patterns. Speak plainly, Vex. They are making us bleed for every inch of ground, sir. Supreme Commander Rax ordered the 2nd and 3rd battle groups deployed. 15,000 additional troops, supported by atmospheric fighters and heavy artillery. Surely, he reasoned, overwhelming force would break the human resistance. The humans responded by blowing up 3 of our troop transports while they were still in descent. Over 2,000 warriors died screaming as their ships spiraled into the ocean. The humans had somehow hacked our tactical frequencies and knew exactly where our ships would be. That was when I first heard the word that would come to define this nightmare. Marines. The human military had dozens of different organizational units, but these Marines seemed to appear wherever the fighting was thickest. They were smaller than us, slower, weaker in raw physical strength, but they fought with a ferocity that defied logical analysis. I watched through a drone feed as 6 Marines held a position against 40 of our warriors. They should have been overrun in seconds. Instead, they used overlapping fields of fire, explosive traps, and what appeared to be pure, stubborn refusal to die. When they finally ran out of ammunition, they fought with knives. When those broke, they used their hands, teeth, rocks, anything. 2 of them survived. They were extracted by helicopter while actually laughing and making crude gestures at our forces. I had never seen anything like it. "Vex, explain this," Supreme Commander Rax demanded, his voice tight with frustration. Our intelligence indicated humans were social creatures, averse to conflict, motivated primarily by comfort and safety. These behaviors do not match the data. I pulled up the historical files I had tried to warn the Council about. "Sir, human history is 98% warfare. They have been fighting themselves for their entire recorded history. Fighting us is, from their perspective, just another day. That is impossible. No species could survive that level of internal conflict. And yet, here we are, sir." The ground war deteriorated into a brutal stalemate. We controlled the landing zones, barely. The humans controlled everything else, and made sure we paid in blood for every building, every street, every kilometer. They used tactics we had never encountered. Booby traps that turned our own equipment against us. Psychological warfare that left our warriors jumping at shadows. Propaganda that made us question our mission. Then, 3 months into the invasion, everything changed. I was reviewing casualty reports when Communications Officer Trell burst into my workspace, his scales pale with shock. "Vex, you need to see this. Now." He pulled up a video feed captured by one of our recon drones. The image showed a human military outpost, standard defensive configuration. Nothing remarkable. Then I saw it. Walking next to the human soldiers, wearing what appeared to be a custom-made vest with small cameras and communication equipment attached, was a creature unlike anything in our xenobiology database. It was small, perhaps 2 feet long, with black and white striped fur. It moved with a rolling gait, its claws digging into the earth with each step. Its eyes were small, dark, and carried an expression that I can only describe as absolute zero concern for anything in the universe. "What is that?" Trell asked, his voice barely a whisper. I accessed the human data networks, something we had been doing with increasing frequency as our invasion faltered. The answer came back within seconds. It is called a honey badger. Scientific name Mellivora capensis. According to human records, it is classified as the most fearless animal on their planet. It is the size of a small prey animal. How dangerous could it possibly be? I continued reading, my blood running cold as I processed the information. Trell, according to these files, honey badgers have been documented fighting and winning against lions, hyenas, leopards, and venomous snakes. They have skin tough enough to resist machete strikes and arrows. They are immune to most toxins and venoms. They can dig through concrete. And most disturbingly, they possess what humans describe as an absolute refusal to acknowledge the concept of retreat. You are saying this tiny creature is a threat to our warriors? I looked at the video feed again. The honey badger was staring directly at our drone camera. I swear it knew we were watching. Trell, if the humans have decided to weaponize this animal, we may have a serious problem. The next day, we discovered exactly how serious that problem was. 4th Assault Battalion was moving through a suburban area the humans called Logan when the attack happened. 30 warriors, full combat armor, heavy weapons support. They were searching for a reported human resistance cell. The honey badger came out of nowhere. I watched the helmet camera footage from squad leader Vrax. One moment the street was empty. The next, This small black and white creature was charging directly at his position, making a sound that can only be described as concentrated fury given voice. Vrax raised his plasma rifle and fired. The shot should have vaporized the creature. Instead, it dodged, impossibly fast for something so small, and leaped directly at his face. What happened next was difficult to watch. The honey badger latched onto Vrax's helmet and began tearing through the composite armor with its claws. Vrax was 12 feet tall, weighed over 600 pounds, and had killed in dozens of combat situations. He was screaming like a hatchling. 3 warriors moved to assist, firing their weapons at the creature now on Vrax's head. They missed, hitting their own squad leader instead. The honey badger jumped to the next warrior, targeting the vulnerable joint seals in his armor. Dark blood sprayed. The entire squad opened fire. In the confusion, they killed 4 of their own warriors. The honey badger seemed to be everywhere at once. A whirlwind of teeth and claws, and absolute mayhem. Finally, a warrior landed a direct plasma hit. The honey badger was thrown 20 feet, smoking and clearly injured. Everyone stopped, breathed, assumed the threat was neutralized. The honey badger stood up, shook itself, made a sound that I can only interpret as anger, and charged again. It took 17 direct hits before it finally stopped moving. In the process, it had wounded 9 warriors, killed 2, and completely shattered 4th Assault Battalion's morale. When I filed my report, Supreme Commander Rax did not believe me. You are telling me that a single animal, not even a human soldier, caused this level of damage? Yes, sir. And according to human broadcasts, they have deployed 47 additional honey badgers across various combat zones. They are calling it Operation Honey Trap. The humans seem to find it amusing. Rax's claws scraped across his command throne. This is madness. We are the apex predators of this sector. We do not lose to prey animals. With respect, sir, I do not believe the honey badger understands the concept of being prey. That night, I accessed the human internet forums, reading their discussions about the war. The humans were indeed amused. They were posting videos, making jokes, creating what they called memes, showing honey badgers attacking Qarthian warriors. The most popular image showed a honey badger with the caption, "When you absolutely positively need to ruin an alien invader's day." But beneath the humor, I saw something else. Pride. Unity. A species that had been fighting itself for millennia had suddenly found a common enemy. They were working together in ways our intelligence had never predicted possible, and they were winning. I pulled up our casualty statistics. In 6 months of fighting, we had lost 42,000 warriors. We controlled less than 3% of the planet. Supply lines were constantly under attack. Morale was collapsing. And now we were facing not just human soldiers but weaponized animals that did not understand fear. I wrote a recommendation to Supreme Commander Rax. Withdraw immediately. This invasion is not sustainable. He rejected it. We are Qarthians, he declared to the War Council. We do not retreat from lesser species. We will adapt our tactics and crush this resistance. That was when I knew we had already lost. Not because we could not win militarily, though that was increasingly questionable, but because we were facing something we had never encountered before, a species that fought not just to survive, but because fighting was woven into the very fabric of their existence. The humans had a saying I found in their military literature: "We shall never surrender." Looking at the data, watching our forces bleed and die for minimal gains, I finally understood what that meant. And tomorrow, I would have to explain to the War Council that 3 more honey badgers had been deployed to the front lines. I did not think they would take it well. The humans called it the Battle of Toowoomba, though calling it a battle was generous. Massacre would be more accurate, except we were the ones doing most of the dying. I stood in the command center watching real-time feeds from 11 different drone cameras, each one showing a fresh variation of tactical disaster. Supreme Commander Rax had committed 8 full battalions to securing a single human city, convinced that overwhelming numbers would finally break their resistance. He was wrong, spectacularly and expensively wrong. Captain Mira, our newest intelligence officer, leaned over my shoulder, her breathing rapid and shallow. Vex. Tell me what I am seeing is a technical malfunction. I wished I could. On screen 4, a human they identified as Corporal Andrews was riding a honey badger like some kind of tiny furry war mount, directing it toward our soldiers while firing a weapon they called a shotgun. The absurdity of the image was matched only by its effectiveness. 3 warriors were already down, shredded by the creature's claws while Andrews picked off anyone who got too close. No malfunction, I replied, my voice flat. That is genuine footage. The humans have apparently trained some of the honey badgers to work in tactical coordination with their soldiers. That should not be possible. Wild animals cannot be trained for combat operations. Perhaps you should inform the honey badger of that fact. I am certain it will apologize and stop immediately. Mira's scales flushed purple with stress. You are being sarcastic during a military crisis. When you have watched enough of our warriors flee in terror from a 20-pound mammal, sarcasm becomes a psychological defense mechanism. I learned that from reading human psychology texts. The humans had begun broadcasting educational materials about Earth animals directly to our ships, helpfully explaining various species that might also be weaponized if we did not leave. Yesterday's broadcast covered something called a cassowary, described as a murder chicken with knife feet. Tomorrow's preview promised information about drop bears, though I suspected that one might be an attempt at humor. Supreme Commander Rax entered the command center, his presence immediately silencing all conversation. He had aged visibly in the past 3 months, scales dull, eyes sunken. The weight of 47,000 dead warriors tends to have that effect. Status report, he demanded, though his voice lacked its former authority. I gestured to the main display. Sir, Battalion 7 has been routed. Battalion 12 is requesting emergency evacuation. Battalions 3, 5, and 9 have suffered 60% casualties and are combat ineffective. The humans have introduced 4 additional honey badgers to the theater, plus something they are calling a kangaroo, which I am still attempting to classify as either livestock or a biological weapon. Casualties? In the past 8 hours? 1,700 warriors. Over the past week? 6,200. I paused, knowing my next words would not be well received. Sir, at our current casualty rate, we will lose our entire invasion force within 4 months. We are losing warriors faster than the Empire can replace them. Rax slammed his fist onto the console, cracking the reinforced surface. This is unacceptable. We are being humiliated by primitives and their pets. With respect, sir, I do not believe the honey badgers consider themselves anyone's pets. The humans seem to view them more as extremely violent colleagues. A new alert flashed across my screen. I pulled up the feed, then immediately wished I had not. Major Krell, one of our most decorated warriors, was on camera running at full sprint away from what appeared to be 3 honey badgers working in coordinated pack tactics. Behind them, a human soldier was casually eating something and watching the pursuit like it was entertainment. Major Krell tripped, fell, and curled into a defensive ball. The honey badgers swarmed over him, and I quickly muted the audio. Some sounds do not need to be preserved for posterity. The human soldier finished eating, wiped his hands on his uniform, then actually whistled. The honey badgers immediately disengaged and returned to his position, where he rewarded each one with what appeared to be strips of dried meat. Captain Mira made a choking sound. They have trained the creatures with food rewards, like training hounds for hunting. Except, these hounds can shred armor, plating, and apparently feel no fear whatsoever. I zoomed in on the soldier's uniform insignia. Australian Defence Force, 2nd Battalion. The humans have named that particular unit the Badger Brigade. Their motto, according to intercepted communications, is "Get mad or get mauled." This is insane, Mira whispered. How is this happening? I had been asking myself the same question for months. The answer, I had finally realized, was cultural. The Qarthian Empire had conquered through overwhelming force and intimidation. We expected species to recognize our superiority and submit. It had worked on 47 previous worlds, but humans did not think like that. They looked at superior force and saw a challenge. They looked at impossible odds and got creative. and when they found an animal that shared their complete disregard for survival instincts, they turned it into a weapon. It was brilliant, horrifying, and deeply unfair. A priority transmission came through from Sector Command. Admiral Thex's image appeared on the main screen, his expression grim. Supreme Commander Rax, I am ordering immediate withdrawal of all forces from Earth. The invasion is tactically unsustainable and strategically pointless. We are losing resources, warriors, and credibility across the Empire. I expected Rax to argue, to rage against the decision. Instead, he simply sagged, suddenly looking every one of his 70 cycles. Acknowledged, Admiral, initiating withdrawal protocols. The command center erupted in barely concealed relief. Even the most loyal warriors were tired of dying to creatures that should have been irrelevant footnotes in our invasion plans. But withdrawals are never simple, especially when your enemy has tasted victory and wants more. The evacuation of Brisbane took 6 days and cost us another 3,000 warriors. The humans harassed our retreat every step of the way, their Marines and regular army units coordinating with local resistance fighters, and, of course, the honey badgers. On the 4th day, I witnessed something that perfectly encapsulated this entire disaster of a war. One of our heavy transport ships, the Dark Moon, was preparing for orbital insertion when a human aircraft, small and agile, approached at high speed. Our point defense systems locked on, prepared to fire. Then we saw what the aircraft was carrying strapped to its underside. A honey badger in a specially designed harness, wearing what appeared to be a parachute. They would not. Captain Mira breathed. They could not possibly be that insane. The aircraft reached optimal altitude and released its cargo. The honey badger plummeted toward our ship, its parachute deploying at what seemed like the last possible second. It landed directly on our hull, near one of the primary sensor arrays. What happened next took 47 seconds and caused 8 million credits worth of damage. The honey badger systematically destroyed 3 external sensors, 2 communication relays, and managed to breach a cooling vent before our security teams could respond. By the time they reached the creature, it had vanished into the ship's maintenance ducts. We spent 16 hours hunting a single honey badger through our own vessel. It evaded capture, killed 2 security officers who got too close, and eventually escaped by riding a waste disposal ejection out of the ship and parachuting back to Earth. The humans uploaded video of the entire operation to their internet within 3 hours. The title was Operation Badger Drop, because regular commandos are too mainstream. It had 17 million views before we even left orbit. The final transport lifted off on day 6. I stood at the observation window watching Earth shrink in the distance, this small blue planet that had cost us everything. Supreme Commander Rax appeared beside me, staring at the same view. We stood in silence for several minutes before he spoke. Do you know what the worst part is, Vex? Sir, we were not defeated by their military, though it was formidable. We were not defeated by their technology, though they adapted faster than we anticipated. We were defeated by their mindset. He gestured toward the planet below. They simply refused to accept that they could lose. And when they found an animal that shared that trait, they made it a symbol of their resistance. I nodded slowly. The humans have a phrase, sir. Unconquerable spirit. I believe we just learned what that actually means. Indeed. Rax turned away from the window. Inform Sector Command that Earth is to be designated a prohibited zone. No Qarthian vessel is to approach within 10 light years. The humans are not worth the cost. Yes, sir. Though I suspect the humans will eventually come to us. What makes you say that? I pulled up the latest intercepted human transmissions, because they have already begun reverse engineering our shield technology, and their military forums are discussing which species in our empire they want to liberate first. Apparently they find the concept of an empire philosophically offensive. Rax actually laughed, a harsh, bitter sound. Of course they do. Very well. Let them come. Perhaps in a few hundred cycles, they will have forgotten this conflict. I do not think humans forget wars, sir. They study them, learn from them, and prepare for the next one. 3 months after our withdrawal, I received an unexpected transmission. Private channel, heavily encrypted, originating from Earth. I almost deleted it as a security risk before curiosity got the better of me. The message was simple. A video file and a text document. The video showed Corporal Andrews, the soldier I had watched riding a honey badger into combat. He was standing in front of a memorial wall covered with names, presumably fallen soldiers. To the Qarthian analyst called Vex, he began, his voice rough but not unkind. We intercepted some of your reports during the war. You were the only one of your people who seemed to understand what you were actually fighting. Respect for that. He gestured to the memorial. 3,200 humans died defending our home. Every one of them mattered. Every one of them chose to fight, even knowing the cost. That is what you never understood about us. We do not fight because we are strong or fearless. We fight because the alternative is unacceptable. Andrews paused, then actually smiled. Oh, and about the honey badgers? Yeah, that was mostly Steve's idea. Guy used to work at a wildlife sanctuary before the war. Brilliant or crazy. We are still not sure which. The badgers got medals, by the way. Full military honors. First time in history animals received combat decorations. The video ended with Andrews giving a casual salute. The text document was labeled, "Things you should know about humanity before you try this again." I read through it carefully. It was part tactical analysis, part philosophical treatise, and part warning. The humans knew we would share intelligence with other species. They wanted to make certain everyone understood the message. Point 17 caught my attention. We do not start fights, but we absolutely finish them. And we have very long memories. Point 32 was even more direct. Yes, we will weaponize our animals. Yes, we know it is unconventional. No, we do not care. Evolution gave us creativity, opposable thumbs, and a planet full of creatures that are almost as stubborn as we are. We will use all available resources. Point 44 made me laugh despite myself. The honey badgers were not even our most dangerous option. Be grateful we did not deploy the geese. I filed the transmission in my personal archive and composed a detailed report for Sector Command. Not about tactics or technology, but about something more fundamental. The humans had taught us a lesson that no military academy in the Empire covered. Never underestimate a species that looks at a small fearless mammal and sees not a curiosity, but a kindred spirit. 6 months after our withdrawal, the Galactic Council formally invited Earth to join as a member species. The humans accepted, with the condition that they could maintain their own military and were not required to participate in what they called wars of aggression. The Council agreed immediately. Nobody wanted to fight the humans again. Last week, I received another transmission from Earth. This one was official, from their newly established Department of Interspecies Relations. They were requesting cultural exchange officers to help promote understanding between our species. They specifically requested me by name. I am still considering whether to accept. Part of me wants nothing to do with the species that humiliated our empire. But another part, the part that has studied their history and culture for months now, is deeply curious. Because here is what I have learned about humans. They do not hold grudges against honorable opponents. They respect strength, admire courage, and value honesty. They will absolutely destroy you if you threaten them. But once the fighting stops, they would rather build bridges than walls. It is infuriating, admirable, and completely contradictory. In other words, perfectly human. Yesterday, I sent my acceptance letter. I will be traveling to Earth in 3 months to begin cultural exchange duties. My assignment location is Brisbane, the city where our invasion failed so spectacularly. Captain Mira thinks I have lost my mind. Supreme Commander Rax, now retired and writing military history, simply nodded and said I was making the right choice. As for me, I am equal parts terrified and excited. I will be living among the species that defeated us, learning their customs, trying to understand what makes them so simultaneously fragile and unstoppable. And yes, I have requested permission to meet the honey badgers. Apparently, several of them now live at a sanctuary where they are teaching human children about wildlife conservation and, presumably, the value of absolutely refusing to back down from anything. The humans find this educational. I find it mildly terrifying and oddly inspiring. But that, I am learning, is just humanity in general. They will feed you, befriend you, teach you, and welcome you into their chaotic, beautiful, impossible civilization. But if you threaten them or those they protect, they will unleash everything at their disposal, including small mammals with bad attitudes and no sense of self-preservation. The galaxy is still trying to process what happened when the Qarthian Empire met humanity. We came expecting conquest and found ourselves running from creatures that weighed less than our weapons. It would be humiliating if it were not so educational. I have one final entry to make in my official report, the conclusion that will be distributed to every military academy in the Empire. Regarding humanity, approach with respect, engage with honesty, and under no circumstances should you assume that size, strength, or technological superiority guarantees victory. The humans will find a way to defeat you using resources you never considered, tactics you never anticipated, and animals you never imagined could be weaponized. Also, seriously, do not underestimate the honey badger. Vex, former tactical analyst, Qarthian Imperial Forces, signing off. My new title, starting in 3 months. Cultural Exchange Officer, Earth Assignment. The universe has a sense of humor after all.